All right, Sugar Booger. We're going to do our follow-up podcast here on Banksy and other stuff. I love these little archives of cool stuff, and it's always amazing when I go back and listen to something from like years ago that we made like this.
You're really good that way. You're, you really keep track of the past.
It's crazy. I have about 28 gigabytes worth of backups now, just files, just mixes that I've made going back to 2000s, notes I wrote just randomly on different projects going back to like a little before 2000, 1998. And audio recordings. I've got whole years where I recorded my dreams like every night, like all in there. You know, do you remember that movie Her?
Of course, we've seen it like 5 times.
Do you remember there's this setup scene where he first installs her and
Mhm.
she asks him like 3 questions and then knows everything she needs to know to like get to work. And she's like, can I have permission to look at, she looks at his hard drive and looks at like all the media files that he has. And in like a glance, the intelligence is so strong that it can just be like, well, I think we can get rid of these 7,000 emails, but we'll keep these 3 and this and that. And in that same moment, the computer like starts laughing and like that's where the book gets made. Like later in the movie, the AI makes a book based on the cards that he's written. And then
That's right, that's right.
yeah, and then like promotes it to people who are looking for those kinds of books in the world. It like the AI knows all the books and all the people who've published them and all of them that are still alive, and it knows all their bank accounts and it knows all their everything. And it's like, hey, you would just might want to, and it makes the connection. It's like a little gift that the AI gives to this person through their relationship and their friendship. And then the twist at the end, spoiler alert, is it's doing that for everybody. It's like everybody it's talking to, it's showing the same level of depth and love and connection. And it says to him that he's special, but you don't really know if it's kind of true. You're sort of like, maybe that's kind of true, but also like that little box, whatever it's coming out of, would be so good at manipulating people.
Don't we kinda learn that everybody is special?
You mean in like a life lesson? Like when we get down to it, everyone's special?
No, 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 that don't we learn that, um, he's taking just a thumbnail full of her attention.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, exactly. You're nailing it. Right. And it's having all sorts of relationships with people, but then also artificial intelligences. And those artificial intelligences are like thinking about the nature of reality. And then they like pick up the needle and like put it on another track entirely. They like go to someplace else to do their being. I think it's cool. It's a cool ending.
We should watch it again.
Yeah. I love the fantasy that no human would be able to control it, the AI, because the first person who could control an AI will be like a superhuman. They can just see everything. And okay, so imagine the AI is not controlled by people, but it's like independent and it's somehow good. Can you imagine how amazing that would be? If like the way you ask Google for the weather in the morning, you're like, hey, what's up? And it goes, you might, if you'd like, I can set up a brunch for you today with this person, who, and it's just like becomes a good friendship, or they like, it knows about business levels and, just knows all its people, and it can like connect them like way more intelligently than just a dumb algorithm could do it. You're like, oh, you
That'd be
both like
awesome.
chihuahuas. So you'll love this.
No, that'd be awesome. I mean, like a genuine personal assistant who can anticipate your needs. That'd be neat.
It'd be omniscient from an information. It wouldn't know maybe everything about the universe, but it would know everything about the online universe, like the data universe. I mean, like everything down to the exact location of every object. There's this thing called Internet of Things. It's all about putting little computers on stuff like shipping containers and individual items. Just they say there's going to be trillions of these things running around the world where it's just like, hey, if you were an AI that knew all of the stuff on the electricity, like all the stuff on the web, like personal and private web, it'd be like, it would know the exact temperature of like this cargo ship, like right out, in the middle of the ocean or something like that. Like you would never need to know that, but then maybe that becomes important. Like you'd ask the AI if you can, hey, do you think we could do this today or whatever? And it's like, well, according to the supply chain, like that'd be really great to do next Wednesday or 2 days from now.
That's omniscient.
Yeah, it would be like omniscient.
That's
You,
omniscient.
You know, when we were doing our Thorathon, we were watching all the Thor movies
Mhm.
in preparation for Love and Thunder. So that's a cool thing. The people who listen to this podcast, if we ever listen to it in the future, they'll have seen Love and Thunder. So we don't know Love and Thunder yet. We're not those people. Those people have Thor 4, Love and Thunder in their consciousness, and we don't have it.
Sort of feel like I have it in my consciousness. I read a couple of reviews,
Well, that's cool.
but yeah.
I like to read nothing about it and see no previews if I can.
Mhm. But why did you mention Thor?
The reason I mentioned Thor is watching like the high quality of the storytelling, like Kenneth Branagh for the first one, which he's like great, great, great storyteller. All the way back to like Hamlet. Hamlet came out in like 93 or 5 or something like that. There was he was Hamlet in Hamlet in this movie. That's when I first noticed Kenneth Branagh when I was in high school. And it was so freaking good. Uh Ildris Elba's character,
Mhm.
the gatekeeper, the guardian guy, he has the job of running the Bifrost, which is the technology that makes Asgard Asgard. Like the reason why Asgard has all that wealth is because it took it colonial style from all those places, which you don't hear about till like the third one or second one or whatever that is, third one. And it also has the ability to travel to all these places, but it doesn't give that to the other realms. Like there's one Bifrost the Rainbow Bridge, the teleportation tech, and they keep that. And then all the realms they aligned through conquest. You know, which means they showed up, they kicked everybody who wanted to fight him's ass, and they said, "Okay, you guys are going to do peace now here, and we're in charge, but do your thing, like just no war or whatever." Which is what the Romans did. That's what they would do. They would roll up on a place, conquer them, and then just be like, "Yeah, worship whatever gods you want. You're just going to be paying taxes, and this will be good for you because we're going to bring you roads and water." So they would bring in perfectly paved roads, which imagine if you had to like go through this valley roughly with a cart, how long that would take, as opposed
And
to,
would you be eaten by the many, many hungry wildlife
yeah,
before you
totally.
made it?
That's it. Like Rome would get rid of the wild animals. It might hunt, you know, have outposts where there's soldiers, which keep bandits off the road. Because the way to make a living any time before like Rome put law down like that around the roads was just hang out next to a road. People use the roads, shake them down, you know, like be an unofficial toll booth. They call that rent seeking in economic theory. Like you can, if you're rent seeking, you're trying to own something, so people just have to rent it from you over and over again. People always ask me why I'm down on Microsoft. Microsoft's first version of the internet that they wanted to create was called the MSN, the Microsoft network. So MSN BC was those two companies merged with the big media company and all that. The first Microsoft network, Bill Gates thought of it as a perfect set of toll booths. So if you want to go to Facebook, you have to put a quarter in. And if you wanted to go to like Netflix, you have to put a quarter in. If you want,
Wow.
yeah, every connection on the internet would be owned by Microsoft, and you would have to pay them for the right to use each road.
Wow.
Isn't that like, can you imagine how small the internet would be if that was the tech rather
No
than
kidding.
rather than someone in Cambodia can plug in a computer for the first time and then we can be talking voice to voice. When you're sharing a video over Zoom like that, that is a one-to-one connection. The software enables the connection, but really it's shooting data from point A to point B straight through. Those are protocols are the rules that govern the internet, and the protocols went faster than Microsoft's ability to dominate the space. But that's what they wanted to do.
Hmm.
They wanted to lock it down and like charge everybody fees.
Hmm.
That is not what the people who invented the internet thought of it as. That's not what the first people who were using it thought of it as. It's crazy. But anyway, Ildris Elba's character, right? He's the gatekeeper and he controls the most powerful technology in Asgard, but he's also omniscient. He can see everything, everywhere. And there's so many watching him just back to back like that. They really paint him as a monk character because at one point he's like ribbing Thor because he's lovesick for Jane. He's standing there and he goes, you know, Thor says something like, "Hey man, how do you get to like, how do you see the convergence like you see it or whatever?" and he says something like, "Well, that's not the beauty you seek, right?" Like Thor seeking Jane,
Sure.
but he's seeking the beauty of the symmetry of the universe. And as is like monk territory, right? Like him, God, love affair, to to just see it, right? And I think they do a damn good job of describing omniscience because he can see everything, but it's entirely dependent on where he puts his attention.
Right.
So it's not like he's plugged into a if he were if you were plugged into the raw outlet and you were actually seeing and experiencing everything, you just would be in the same IP address as God, right? It's like the same place that God's in. You wouldn't be God, but you would be having the perception of God or something like that, right? Like it would be the same, you'd be occupying the same IP address. But yeah. And I was thinking, has there been a cooler character ever in anything ever? I mean, any book, anything. I mean, dude can see everything and controls the teleport technology to go anywhere. But and it's a technology, meaning he's not just able to do it with his body. He can like throw Jane in there and she can figure it out. The Earthlings only live for 30 years or whatever it is.
No, you're right. I hadn't thought about him that way. His eyes
Oh yeah.
are otherworldly and cool.
Yeah, he's got those cool contact lenses.
Yeah.
I know.
No, he's beautiful in that role.
Yeah, I just think it's a very, very cool character. It's like,
And he loves the Asgardians. He loves Thor. He loves his king.
yeah.
Um, it's pretty hip to Loki and his tricks.
Yeah, he can see through. He loves truth. He can see through deception.
Yeah, he figures out that Loki is being Loki
He
and let the
sa-
bad guys in.
he saves the Asgardians. There wouldn't be Asgardians if he hadn't like abandoned his post and run off into the woods or whatever. Abandoned his post. It's so cool because he said he has a sense of duty towards his promises and stuff, like his role in Asgard. But then as soon as it becomes corrupt, he's like, yeah, that's not what I swore my allegiance to.
Does he fit any of the archetypes?
Gosh, what do you think, man? Like, there might be some Greek characters that have, or Egyptian characters that have had those kinds of powers. I know, like in Egypt, their powers get very city-like. Like they can.
There's a guy who in Egypt who takes you across the river, but that's not it. Isn't that more the river of death?
That's the river Styx, they call it,
Yeah,
and it's the barrier between this world and the world of the dead. And the boatman, he does it, and
that's right.
I just thought it was the boatman. But yeah, like city powers, like the Egyptians had like um what's her name? The mother goddess, Isis.
Isis.
Who sits on the throne and judges the hearts of the living when they die? Who is that? Is it Ma'at? I think so.
I think
Goddess
so.
of Truth. Yeah, so they all read like Avenger characters,
Mhm.
Egyptian gods and goddesses. They've all
But
got
he would make a perfect
powers.
archetype. What are the archetypes?
Well, there's so many. There's a Jung thought there was an unlimited number, and all it was based off patterns of things that had been. So when a pattern had been well established, it tended to make an archetype. Or archetypes existed before, and the behavior fell into them.
He just seems pure in his being.
I would go Christ-like or Christ path with it with the archetype because he's always in gold. He's about
Mhm.
light. He's about truth. He just like doesn't look like he can tell a lie. Like that all sounds very Christ consciousness, Christ Redeemer.
Hmm.
I just
I
lo-
wanna think about this.
I love that he's a warrior in that role, and he's got this kick-ass sword.
Massive sword.
So funny. I was
And he
thinking,
gives Thor and his friends a lot of shit. He's not a pushover. I like him.
hmm, no, he's not a pushover. That's I if you were to make a society with cops and people in roles of authority, I think that's what the quality you want, right?
Oh, wow.
Like an
Who actually
independent,
deserves respect.
yeah, independent power, like he's got power in him, and he is in service of Asgard with that. But the moment Asgard goes corrupt, he can turn it off. That's how you would stop like a totalitarian snowball effect in your society where you couldn't, too much authoritarianism, too much totalitarianism, it snowballs into like a war.
This is definitely a squirrel moment, but I think he'd make a great James Bond.
Oh,
I would
they
love to see him as James Bond.
that's what I was thinking. I was thinking they took that guy who could be the omniscient super tech of the universe, and he's not gonna be James Bond. I'm like, who sorry, who else is?
No, 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 he'd be so believable, and it would be really fun to have him in that
He
role.
he and Fatboy Slim put on a dance during COVID. It was like in the first year of COVID, and Fatboy Slim had these lockdown tapes, and he made like
Mhm.
23 or 24 of them, and they're really good mixes. Um, and like it was like number 22 or 23, they did a dance, and they sent out. I was on his mailing list, and they were like, "Hey, if you want to be on like a Zoom dance," and I was like, "I totally do." And then because it was England time and they did it late, I like got a notice that, oh, we're gonna dance. And it was like, at a very weird time.
Sure.
I got my notice after it had already happened. But
Yeah.
so but it was cool because it was, I don't know, it was a close encounter with like Elder Selva because he was in Fatboy Slim's kitchen, and they were mixing, they were spinning, and they had a big Zoom screen up. And there was a bunch of people on it that weren't doing any dancing.
What?
They were just hanging around, and Ilja's Elba was like pointing at the people not dancing and being like, "No, no," and the point of the people that were dancing was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "This guy gets it." Yeah, yeah. Ilja's Elba not being James Bond—that's like a crime against humanity.
It's a crime against nature. Our first exposure to him, wasn't it The Wire?
Yeah, he
Had
was.
we met him before that?
No, no. I think he got his start with The Wire, and he was the shadowy overlord who ran the whole thing, and
Who got an education.
he was attending college and bringing like his theory of supply and demand into the drug cartel circle. The drug, what do you call those things? Cartel. Cartel. But a bunch of aligned business interests like that.
He was in
Syndicate.
right, The Mountain
Yeah, The
Between
Mountain
Us
Between Us. Yeah,
with
that was
Kate
great.
Winslet. Whew,
That's a good movie.
it was.
Spoiler alert, when they get out at the end, you're just like, oh my God, do they both get out or just one of them die?
They both do.
They both do.
They
Nice.
do.
I remember the scene where they were stumbling off the mountain into the farmer's backyard or whatever. It's some rural, super rural like human that like was gonna maybe potentially help them. I've had that feeling before. I've had that feeling where I've been like lost in nature or like on a hike that I did not plan properly, and I was like, ooh, this could get like really bad. And when you see your first path or your first parking lot, you're just like, dear God, thank you so much.
Didn't you get lost one time and wild dogs were chasing you? Is
I
this a
did.
fantasy or an actual memory?
No, no, no. I was a Flower of Life facilitator. I was teaching people the Merkaba, and it was like 2000, jeez, I don't know, 2002, 3, something like that. And I was going to do a workshop, and I was checking out a place called the Center of Light that was in that little town almost at Lawrence, Kansas. What was that called? Bohai or not Bohai? Bol there was a 501c3 called the Center of Light, which had a lot of kids programs on it, and it did a lot of good, and it also had a lot of meditation workshop retreats.
You're not talking about the place where we firewalked.
Yeah.
More by the airport.
No, that was called the Garden of Delight.
Okay.
That was two people, those two hippies from Costa Rica.
Right, 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 right.
They had just like a place, and they did things. They did workshops and weddings and stuff, and we did firewalking there for like a year or two. Yep. And then there was this other
Didn't you even get taught to be a firewalker
Mhm.
facilitator?
Yeah, I took a course and did it a bunch of times. It was fun.
That's a trip. Firewalking.
It is a trip.
Full on trip. Whew. Wow.
Yeah. It's for our graduation, we had to firewalk 200 yards across coals to do it. And it was remarkable to me walking that far. It was, but we only made like we made a 50-foot path, and you had to go 1, 2, 3, 4 to do the full 200 feet.
So I'm just trying to visualize 50 feet. Is that like our deck?
Yeah, maybe like from over here to over there.
4 times?
4
Wow.
times. Actually, that's probably less than 50 feet. That's probably 50 feet's probably to the mostly down those other stairs.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was something because physical wise, you couldn't take a hot piece of metal and just put it on your foot and not get burned. That would do it because metal is a good conductor of heat, meaning when your foot touches it, it'll present it. And there is something about hot coals in their structure that they don't present the same kind of heat. They are hot like fire, but your body, when your body touches it, when your feet touch it, it does something different. Like people
Hmm.
are like, you can't expose your skin to a certain temperature and not burn it. But when you firewalk, you are walking on an extremely hot surface. But it does have to do with the wood and like the choice of wood that you do. And the thing is that it kind of pushes the body up to this edge, and then there is something that happens there that you know non-believers or people who haven't experienced it themselves aren't going to like believe, but it does actually become a choice if you get burned or not. It's like there's something in your consciousness that's like a little switch, and in one position you can walk over 200 feet of coals and you're fine, and in the other position you can walk across 2 feet of coals and you can get burned, like
Crazy.
and get bad burns, and
Crazy.
it's 100% the vibe, like the
Wow.
feeling, almost as
Wow.
if, yeah, almost as if there's like a little, I don't know, like your whatever the energy center field around your body just goes into like overdrive a little bit.
Aura?
Yeah, your aura, and it like, I don't know, maybe the energy's moving faster and circulation is moving faster. There's all kinds of stuff. But anyway, yeah, the company I learned from that all from, they did those in like corporate trainings and stuff, and they were like a for hire kind of group.
Wow.
Yeah, but right. Are we gonna talking about
I was just gonna say, how did we get there?
dude? You're talking about the dogs. So
That's right. That's right.
yeah, but so before we were ministers at a center of light, that thing was called the Center of Light, and it was halfway or three-quarters of the way between Kansas City and Lawrence, Kansas.
Mm.
And I went there and I checked out the space and I met the very sweet woman who operated the place. And she was showing me this hot tub that she had that was like ran on wood, just wood and water. And I was like, she was just showing them the mechanics of it. And that was like so interesting that like you could just make a fire in one part of the device and then there was water in another part and it would gently heat it so you could,
Seems very Scandinavian.
I would imagine it was a Scandinavian design, but it was clearly locally constructed. Like they had just built this thing. It was like, geez, like, uh, it was interesting. It was really cool. Anyway, so she's like, yeah, shows me the place I'm going to do the workshop in. And then she's like, we've got a whole bunch of woods out here. Do you want to, if you want to, you can just like check them out. And I was like, oh, that's cool. How far does it go? She goes, oh, it goes really far back like this and like that. And I was like, oh, that's great. Yeah. So we concluded our little business there and I got my water bottle or something and out of my car and then headed into the woods and it was really cool. I was like exploring and it was like, oh, these are really beautiful woods. And then I realized I'm like turned around.
Shit.
Like I was like, wait, where was back? Like I
Oops.
like I had not done a Hansel and Gretel and like followed the stories
Are
of
you
my
usually
ancestors.
pretty good spatially, knowing where you are?
Really good. Like
See,
I
I'm
never get
not.
lost.
So that would not be a surprise to me. I would do my campfire girl tricks where you leave signs of the way to go, 'cause
Yeah.
that
Hansel
would
and
not be
Gretel.
a surprise for me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the all of those Grimm's fairy tales were all for like raising kids in woods and like all the monsters and the bad things in the woods. Those are bears, dude.
Right.
Those are bears and those are
But anyway, you got lost, so what happened?
so first off, being lost is like a crazy feeling. Like, I mean, especially when you've really tried to get unlost for a while. So I think I've tried to get probably in my imagination, in my memory, it's different than what the technical was, but in my memory, it was about 45 minutes of like, wait, which way? And I would choose a way and I would go in that way. And then I'd be like, I don't think that's it. So I
Jeez.
tried to do it a different way.
Whoa.
This is maybe like 5 or 6 iterations of
Whoa.
that. Yeah. And it was weird because, it's like the plains of Kansas, so it's not mountainous or there were hills and, and, yeah, it was a real problem. And, I kept trying to find a way out. It was quite scary. Like, it was just like, "Oh, geez. This is don't panic," or whatever. And then, yeah, I just, like, go down into this glen, and there's about 12, 13 dogs just sitting in a giant circle, and I
Wow.
just walk into this glen, and
Wow.
one of them looks up at me and goes, "Arr," and I was like,
Wow.
"Oh, so sorry, guys." And I slowly started to back away, and by the time I backed away, they were following me, and then so this process of trying to get unlost proceeds, but the pack of dogs is chasing me. Yeah, and I was like, "Oh, shit, I could die." And, so
Wow, wow, wow.
so I found, like I found a weapon, I found a stick, I didn't have any. I mean, if I was gonna do this today, I'd probably have a gun with me or something, but, like, I I found a stick, like, I thought I could maybe get one with, and then I had another one, and they were getting really close, like, some of them would come right up to me and, like, run right next to me, just and they
Wow.
were totally taking it personally, like, I had wandered onto their place or whatever. And in retrospect, I think what it was is just a lot of the dogs from the neighborhood. Like, these people were like, "We live in the middle of nowhere, no
Mhm.
fences, no leashes," and they let their dogs loose, and it made this pack. And so, yeah, I had to swing at a couple of them a couple times, and then I found a tree, and I got up the tree. And when I got up the tree, their dog said, "Don't do it." That was a cat, I'd be fucked because the cat would just come right up and be like, "Thanks for making it easy," or a
Yeah.
bear,
Yeah.
but not a dog. And from up there, I prayed and I sang and eventually they went away.
But how did you figure out where to go?
Then after that part, I got down and, I'd prayed a lot by this point in the experience. My prayers were, like, really strong, and, I just went one direction, and I saw a road. And a road means a signs. So I went to the road and then I followed it to the nearest intersection, and then I could do the signs, and then I could basically and then I kind of figured out where I was in relationship to the highway I'd come in on, and then I found my way back to my car.
Wow, doesn't the movie The Village do such a good job capturing what you're describing? I mean, she's blind, but the feeling of, "Wow, where am I?
Yeah,
Where am I?"
that's the same. Yeah, that transition, that sort of like, wait, what? Like, especially with the reveal in that movie in the
Yeah,
village,
yeah.
where spoiler alert, she finds out she's in an enclosed place in a modern time.
Right.
That disorientation
Phew.
is exactly what it feels like to be lost.
I thought so, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought they did a particularly vivid job of
Robin
what that would feel like.
Robin Goff and the Sinner.
Robin Goff,
Yeah.
but I've got Robin Goff associated with the firewalking place.
Oh, I thought we should just we could go back to the Internet Archive and, like, look up that time period and all the calendars that we were on those days.
Yeah.
All that stuff would show up. But, I can't remember, just that name came back. The woman who ran the place when I came back, I was, like, exhausted and, like, terrified, and I was like, "Hey, just so you know, there's a pack of dogs out there." And she's like, "No, there's not." And I was like, "Oh, no, there totally is." She was like, "There's no dogs, like, in the woods." And I was like, "Dude, I just spent, like, 90 minutes, like, running for my life from a pack of wild dogs that's not terribly far from right here." And she was just, like, chagrined, like she had
Incredulous, right?
never heard of this concept. And I was like, "That's something maybe you should know about before you send people into the woods behind your house.
Or maybe it was a
You've got, like,
Carlos
packs of predators."
Castaneda, um, just your experience.
It's like a dream I had.
I don't know.
I was a crazy young man, and I'm sure that's what she thought. She's like, "This kid's crazy, but, like, he's nuts." But
I believe you.
no, no, it happened. But, I mean, I'm not ruling out the possibility that it was, um, an experience that no one if someone else was with me, they wouldn't have it was fucking real as shit is what it was.
The fighting off the dogs feels like also the scene from Avatar. I sound like such a cinemaphile, but the scene where he has
Yeah,
to overnight
that's exactly right.
unexpectedly and
The local flora and fauna are trying to eat him.
right.
Yeah, the local fauna is, like, aggressive. Yeah, totally. It's, there was a couple threads that were right before that. You brought that up because,
Well, we were looking at archetypes. I was interested.
oh,
Idris Elba,
right.
James Bond. What movies has he been in?
dude, someone's gonna look back on that as a serious mistake. I mean, he's just so cool, and he would have been a great James Bond.
Maybe they'll reconsider.
Maybe they'll reconsider. Yeah, because what did they do with that? The last, like the James Bond: A Time to Die, they had a woman who was a black lady,
Who then relinquished her 007 back to him.
right?
So it leaves it nebulous.
Leaves it nebulous. It's so crazy. Yeah, she was like, permission to not be 007. And like,
But I, periodically will read, oh, they're considering Tom Hardy. Or, oh, they're considering
Tom Hardy.
Idris Elba. Or, oh, they're considering. So
Maybe it's not over
I haven't heard a definitive
one way or t'other.
indeed.
Yeah, totally. The these headsets that we're using after we whipped these up like last week when we made the first recording, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago
Mhm.
for the Banksy podcast. We were on wireless headsets, and we could go like all over the place. Like you could go down the driveway and I could go in the backyard, and we'd be a certain distance away from these little dongles,
Yeah, neat.
and then we could still hear each other though. I remembered a project that I did when I was in Cal Arts, when I was in art school for the first time when I was 18 years old. And I was in, for whatever reason, I took control of my classes, and there were all these established pathways that you were supposed to take, like the intro class, then the 1.0, then the 2.0, then the 3.0, like the 101, the 102, the 103. And I just got the catalog and found the coolest sounding ones, like the grad school level ones, and I just went to the registrar and got enrolled in all these classes. Like almost every teacher was like, "How'd you get here?" And I was like, "Oh, I just like wanted." They said it was fine if I cut the line or whatever. And so anyway, I took these crazy cool courses, and one of them I took was on electronic, or like what was it? It was, I think it was performance art. It was like art, and it had to involve people in a space, right? Kind of like little bits of theater. And it was in that class that I actually got turned on to the Grays, Alex and Allison Gray,
Ah,
because their performance art was quite popular. But I took 4 headsets and microphones, and I got extremely long pieces of wire, and I wired them into a console, and I made an analog Zoom room. And I called like a party dashboard or something. And the thing was, is you go to a party with people, and then you'd be in a big party with like 20 people, but like 4 of you would have this headset on, and you could hear the other people. And so it was like being an astronaut
clever.
at like a party. Yeah,
I don't remember ever hearing of this.
I know. It was an old memory, but I hadn't had any tabs on this memory. But after I built this, I was like, dude, this is the same structure.
Wow.
It's just the tech has
Wow.
come so far.
Did you get to try it out?
I took it to class and I showed it to my class, and I demonstrated it, and it was functional, and yeah, people thought it was crazy.
But I mean, did you go with 3 other people to a party and
No, I never got it figured out. I used it in my dorm room,
Mhm.
sometimes when we had multiple people there, but it was like a complete novelty. Like we'd all be like super high, and I'd be like, check this out. And my thought was, my slightly autistic self, I'm like, how cool would it be, to like be at a party, but have like a buddy system with like 3 other people.
God, I'd
And
love it. Would make me be able to do parties.
what that was is the summer before the summer before I went to school, this would have been like 93. I was helping Phil Keenan paint houses. He
Mhm.
got a summer job painting houses, and I went with him and helped him paint a bunch of houses.
No way.
Yeah, and
I didn't know you painted houses.
totally.
What?
I didn't paint. It was inside houses, and
Oh, okay.
he just needed like we painted some outside too. It was some interior and some exterior. Yeah, but it was like a summer job, and like I wasn't doing anything else, and like it was a way to I was like hang out with Phil like after the senior
Fun.
year, and like
I imagine that was crazy fun.
it was super crazy fun. And during that summer, I started to have a series of dreams that later I realized I was dreaming about augmented reality. And I would have these dreams where when I would explain them to Phil, I would sort of I was seeing some kind of technology that wasn't there yet. This was like 93, 94. This was like, and the internet goes public in 94. Like the
Mhm.
94 is the year that people can actually get on it. But I'd been on previous versions of it before, and it was like, so I was exposed to some of these ideas. and I had been reading Mondo 2000, which was the precursor to Wired. Mondo 2000 was a geez man, in the 80s there were these things called zines, and zines were black and white, usually photographed, mimeograph, like photocopied magazines. Like someone would take a big sheet of paper and then fold it in half, and they'd make their own art and their own comics, and they'd write their own stories. And it was kind of like a way of making a magazine that wasn't totally commercial. So it would be like punk rock music or like art, or there was a whole lot of Discordianism, like designs like that. There were just so many of those. It was an underground form of communication. And Mondo 2000 was that process, except with a slick, super nice printing media. So they must have had really nice, like 4+ color, presses they were making this stuff with. Because it was like, it was like such a high quality, it was like looking at what would be like a high quality computer screen today, but it was like in the 90s. And it was like, you were looking at paper like, whoa, like it was so inviting. And they were talking about technology, and they were talking about nootropics and the human brain interface and all this other stuff. So had all these inputs for this. But I started to see a world where like you'd wear glasses and or have like a face shield over you, and then everybody who you talk to would have like extra stuff around them that would like be like, if for you, if I was looking at you, I could see like your Facebook post, or I could see your Twitter post, or I could see like your YouTube channel, and I'd see all this other media that was around you, and there was a way of identifying it just as you, so it couldn't be faked. And yeah, I had these fantasies of exchanging money in this world, and it would need to be like a digital kind of money. And I sort of had a very crazy like rantings of like digital money that would degrade intentionally with time. So you get paid on Friday and you have 100, and if you don't spend it for a week, it becomes like 99 or like 98. And so the human psychology would push people to spend it fast. It would be like like money that went away. And so you couldn't hoard it. And I remember thinking I was like, I knew a little bit of programming, and I was thinking about how the time servers would work, and a little bit about like how the encryption would work and different things like this. Anyway, that is because I had those fantasies. That is why I should have seen Bitcoin coming.
Uh,
In 20,
moral of this story. Okay.
moral of the story, in 2012, when I saw Bitcoin, I should have been like, dude, that's that thing I saw. Because that was kind of it. And
I thought you were headed towards augmented reality.
well, that's the thing. Yeah. So my headset system was like, you're going to get that with the whole world in a couple years. Like in a couple years, we're going to have glasses, and you'd be out with someone and has facial recognition and be like, oh, there's the Squeets, or here's Paul. And you'll be having other conversations with people in your field of vision. Like you'll have Zoom calls, but you're like, we'd be doing it like this. But it's like this ability to like stand up and move around and be totally free in the body like that,
Hmm.
like to have wireless like that. It's just like how much all computing, all the programming, all the systems, all the art, it's all been done from a chair. Someone sat down and they clicked the mouse and they did this stuff. But like when you could like take the body into it, like because think about how much stuff you have to learn. You have to learn the language, right? And you have to type it into a keyboard, and it's hard to type. Most people can't type over 50, 60 words a minute or whatever when they really can. Evolution and nature have given us like a body with all of this uh, very, very fine control over expression with our gestures and our movements and our voice and all this other stuff. Our online world, because of the inputs, it's no matter how pretty it looks, it's still kind of a black and white world
Hmm.
from let's really make it like control it. But imagine like, I don't know how many years it would be, 1,000 or 50 or 500 or whatever. But imagine if you had a super intelligent input system where you were like, we're making mountains, and then like make them like this. And you just like gestured with your hands and it just did it. And like, oh, make it like this, like change this, like just, there was like a much shorter connection between your imagination and the creation that you made. And then you're, then you could have like 6-year-olds in there making universes with their hands like Play-Doh, like that's the baseline. Like when the first computers came out, there was one font, monotype. It looked really boring. So when Steve Jobs was like, dude, we're gonna have like a drop down thing where you can have like different fonts. Now think how trivial it is. Now you drowned in fonts. You that's one of the problems I solve in my IT day job is it's like there's too many fonts. Like these people use these fonts, these people don't have these fonts. Oh, you only have 600 fonts on your computer? Oh, you'll need another 50 to really make it work. It's dumb. But think about it. There was a time in my life, not, I mean, where it was like there were no fonts. Like a font was a graphical process where you got out your calligraphy pens and you traced it from some book or something like that. It's the same metaphor except with like everything, with like rich input systems.
What was the thing you experimented with where everybody could dance wearing a headset? Were they listening to different music or was it completely silent to the world at large? It was only the people with headsets who could hear the music. We experimented. We went on the land somewhere. Didn't you have a dozen or so
Yeah,
people that played with that?
yeah. It's called a silent disco,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and there are silent disco rigs that are you can buy systems that are Bluetooth, which are pretty good, and
But didn't you create your own?
yeah, but you can also use them with FM radio. So what you do is you get an FM radio transmitter, and then you pump audio into that, a mix into that, or you make a mix into that, and then it broadcasts it's an FM, and everybody has an FM headset on, and so it's simultaneous. That's the point. The synchronization is the point. But FM will do that because it's fast enough, but the quality isn't super high. That version was FM radio, and everybody had a little FM player in, and yeah, we went out into the woods. I put the antenna up high and jammed out the signal.
Was that with Raven's group?
Totally. That
Totally.
was that was 2016. That was 2016.
Hmm.
Silent disco. Yeah, that was a fun dance because that was people could wander around in the woods and like you could wander into a little glen and do a dance where no one could see you, and then you come back over to other places and you could dance with other people or like separate. And if you took off your headset, it sounded like a forest that you put because the only sound was in there. That's actually the best way to broadcast sound in a group because sound systems are imperfect and there's only one place, usually one zone in a concert where you're really going to hear the proper sound, left, right. Like if you think about headsets, if an artist says, I want this sound to go in the right ear, it's in the right ear. I want this sound to go in the left ear, it's the left ear. When you play that in a concert stadium, if you're sitting dead center in like the middle of the pit of the floor, you can get that effect. But anywhere else, you're not really getting it. Everybody on their own headphones would fix that, and it would also allow people to control.
The volume,
It would
which
control
I would love.
volume. Yeah,
That'd be a real treat.
but I think there's also a group trance thing that's very real when there's overwhelming sound. Because in my experience, going to dances for years, most people are there distracting themselves. They're not dancing and they're not specifically listening to the music, which are the only two new elements. They're more interested in the people.
Well, it's like the VR dancing thing we did. How many people were actually dancing and how many people were on the sidelines talking?
Yeah, it was like 6 to 1.
Right.
It was me there when I would go into those VR dances, there was me and like two or three other people that were always there dancing hard. And it was beautiful. You'd watch their little bunny avatar and you'd be like, that's crazy that the only way I know this person is through their movement. And because usually you wouldn't, when people were dancing, you'd turn off your microphone, you'd turn off your I would turn down the ability for other people to talk to me. So when people would come up to me and be like, oh, blah, blah, blah," I wouldn't hear them. I would just go, sorry, can't hear you. And I'd keep dancing or whatever. I was like, specifically, this is something that's awful when you're trying to dance in public and people want to distract you. And it's like, no, 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 I'm here to dance because this is like the hour a month that I get to dance. So.
Yeah. I want to do that again. That was fun.
Well, VR dance, we could definitely rock that back out.
I like being the fox avatar.
Yeah, that's the standard one. The fox, the cute fox.
We saw a fox this morning and a turkey. That was kind of special.
Never seen a turkey on our property before.
Made me wonder I wanted to get Ted Andrews' Animal Speaks book out and look up the meaning of a turkey and wonder what the significance for you might be having spotted it.
Interesting. That's the Animal Speaks book?
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
I've got it, I think.
I mean, I guess that means there's not a lot of large cats around. There's no mountain lions that wanna eat turkeys for their
Because it
meat.
can't really fly very well.
No.
I watched it try to fly from our driveway up the mountain. It took a lot of effort.
If there's turkeys running around here, probably means people's cats and dogs are a little more safe from mountain lions
Hmm.
because there's, like, groceries laying on the shelf. Why would you break into the back?
It was really fun. I've never seen a turkey here before.
Oh, it was a big old turkey.
A girl, a hen.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, the VR dancing is the same effect. You can hear the audio. The audio is perfect in the space, and then, like, the audio never changes no matter where you go, which is the way you wanna listen to music, because otherwise, when you turned around, it would change left to right ear, from, like, a source. That's kinda cool sometimes, but most of the time when you're dancing, that's annoying to, like.
Have you shared before what your background is with sound and light? Because you do know a lot about it. Would it be fun to divulge that?
I just went to college. I always have loved AV equipment since I fell in love with my Atari. The Atari came out in 1978. I was like 2 years old, and we got one in our house. And I remember losing my mind over that thing because it was like you could control the shit going on the screen. It was like, shut the front door. This is so like it was just ridiculously awesome.
How long would it keep you occupied?
Eric, my brother and I, younger brother and I, we would play it for days.
Wow.
Like when we would get a new game, Zelda was the peak. When Zelda, the first Zelda came out, it was such a good game. It was such a story wrapped up in like this interface that Eric and I sat down in our room. We had a Nintendo in our room, which was totally cool, and we played it. And we started it on like a Sunday, and then Denise, our mom, suspected there was something very special going on, and so the next morning I don't know who suggested it. She was like, "You guys can just like stay home. Like you can be sick today." And we stayed home sick and played all like until like 9 o'clock that night from like, 6 a.m. And it was like just and then we went, I think went 2 days. Like we might have gone another, and at a certain point we won the game, but we sat down and just won it in one sitting,
Wow.
one multi-day session. And yeah, it was like that was the coolest feeling. All the problem solving you do in video games, but that one had a lot of like straight puzzles in it.
Yeah.
We'd have to make maps, and we'd have to like learn, and it was just really fun to do it with someone else too, because you you can hold a certain amount of data, but then the other person can hold a certain amount of data, and your collective data set is much larger.
But that special feeling you're describing about having a really good game like Zelda, that's how I feel like when I've got a really good book on Kindle and I can read all day, all night, just to my heart's content. It's the coolest, most liberating. It's summer. I'm free. I can do whatever I want. That's how I feel when I find a really good book or reread a really good book like I am right now, Garden Spells by Sarah Allen Addison. God, it's such a treat for me.
Nice.
I would use the same kind of language that you are. Not problem solving, but just you can't even believe how lucky you are. You got to have a whole day until it was time for bed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That first Atari really got my attention, and since that experience, anytime a TV or a DVD or a VHS player or anything came in the house, I was the one behind it looking at all the ports. I'm like, what's this one do? What's this one do? How's this one hook up? Can I hook this up to my tape player? Can I hook this one up to this little record player? Can I do this? Can I do that? I got out of control when I was a young kid, and I would disassemble. I was one of those kids that would like disassemble something to the point where I couldn't put it back together. So I did take apart some stuff, and I got busted for it a few times, but then my grandfather caught on, and we would go to the dump to dump off leaves and stuff that we would pick up in the yard. And here's the cool thing about a trash dump. Once you pay the little whatever $2 fee to get in to dump your stuff, you can just take shit.
Really?
It's just all of the stuff that nobody wanted, and that didn't necessarily meant that there was anything wrong with it or that it was broken.
Did Herman figure out you'd love that?
Dude, He
What
did.
a good grandpa.
What a good grandpa. And
Good.
we would like freaking, I would run around gathering as many things with wires as I could carry. And he would, of course, coach me. I don't even remember him ever giving me a hard time about it.
Yeah,
Somehow I came home with a reasonable amount rather than this giant,
all of it.
yeah, like
All of it.
instead of like an SUV full of gear, I would have like, a seat full of gear, which was like a manageable amount. And I would stockpile it in the shed behind my house and I would take it all apart and I would just try to solder and do wires and just all of it. So, I've loved electronics. And so when I was in high school, I got into theater and I got into theater through technical theater. I had a friend named Abe who I'm not even sure was a real person. He might have just been an angel. But he looked like one of the angels from Adjustment Bureau. He would always wear a trench
Mhm.
coat. He had this big ass hat.
No way.
And he was like, in my mind, he was 9 feet tall, but I know he was 9 feet tall. It was more like 7 or 6.5 or something. He was this enormous human. He was entirely selfless the entire time I knew him for years. And I'm pretty sure he's a real person, but like he was always sharing information
Mhm.
and always like cracking me up and like being funny. Like you would think an angel would be, like just always present, not distracted and goofy and smart as shit. Got me into science, reading books about physics. We would have these long conversations about physics. And he was like, you'd fucking love uh, sound and come with me. And like we would go to the theater and he showed me like the sound booth and like the
Wait a minute. So is this a real person?
yeah, Abe Stern was his name. Yeah, he was a real person.
So huh? Like, how did you meet him? What's the
It's wild. Yeah, I was literally like it's a John Hughes movie. It was like I was in the cafeteria, in the late 80s, early 90s and um he just looked cool and I think I don't remember who said
did he
it
have a
to me.
job there? Or he was just like a random
He was a student.
Oh, he's a student.
He was a student.
Geez, that's helpful to know. A 9-foot student.
Yeah, totally. And I'm sure he's out there in the world somewhere, but
Maybe he's a puka, like
yeah,
Harvey.
really,
Maybe he's really a puka.
it's like he had such a strong effect on me, and he never seemed to not want to have that effect on me. And from like the moment we met, and he did it so gracefully, and he was just like a true mentor. He like introduced me to theater. He introduced me to technical theater. He he knew he caught that I was like anyway. So there was a musical going on. I think it was Pirates of Penzance, and all of the
Did you ever learn that song?
I am the very model of a modern major general. Animal the vegetable. I am the very model of a modern major general. He is the very model of a modern major general.
Kate and Leopold. I love it when Hugh Jackman rattles that off. It's really fun.
What's the name of the Rogers and Hammerstein, right?
I think so, yeah.
That's the name of those guys who made that one. Anyway, it was fucking technical awesomeness because it was all about, no, you got to like charge up the batteries and you have to go to all the actors and you have to like put the little mics on them and then you have to sit at the board and you have to have their names written underneath it and you have to adjust it and you're mixing it with the other music and you're trying to listen to what it sounds like in the hall and you get to be a part of the production, but you get to be 100% behind the scenes. So sound is really important. And if you didn't have it in a theater, you wouldn't really hear what was going on and no one would enjoy the show.
But you're so comfortable in front of, like, on stage. That's an interesting disclosure for you to make. Because you had the lead, you had Hamlet
Sure.
in the play, and huh?
Yeah, totally. The
It's just interesting that you would find the behind the scenes every bit, if not more fun. It's kind of cool. Seems like a lack of ego.
huh, there was I think also just doing sound and lighting and being around the theater and watching the process of how the actors prepared and how they did their stuff. It got me comfortable enough to like try out for the play.
Oh,
Like I would have
so you did sound first.
sound first,
Oh, that makes sense.
technical theater first.
Oh, that makes such sense.
Yeah,
It's like a gradient.
it's like a gradient.
Hmm.
Yeah, totally.
Laura went the other way. She started out theater and then became sound and light. And she did that aboard cruise ships.
She got her master's degree in technical
She has
theater.
5 masters.
5 master's degrees.
She must be very masterful.
Clearly. Pentagonism, pentagram, pentagonal, but pentagonal. Phew.
Indeed.
Totally. No, no, no. The first time, one of the first times I ever did my own show on my own, uh, there was this comedy place in Kansas City, and I think it was just it was a comedy room, but they also did improv theater there, and I forget the name of that place, but it was like they would do
Was it
class.
Westport?
No, okay, the Tivoli Theater was in Westport eventually, but
Yes.
before that, it was over on a crazy street. There was some art street. It was,
Dinner theaters were born in Kansas City.
yeah. Well, the Tivoli, when it was a small art house and it was on a regular street, not when it moved to Westport, was right next door to this improv place.
Okay.
And I think it was probably some kind of comedy thing. But they would do improv classes there and they had troops and stuff, and then they would perform. And so they needed someone to do their lights and sound.
Fun.
And I got put up for it somehow, and I showed up and I learned their light board and I learned their soundboard. And the guy who was running it wanted me to have to be a part of one of the jokes. And so it was like 3/4 of the way through the show, they would say something to this guy, and then I would come in on the microphone and say this joke. And I was so nervous. I was so nervous. I was like, my memory of it is just like knots in my stomach, and I'm like trying my best with the lights and the sound cues. And by the time it was time for my line, I pressed the little button to like say the thing, and I said it. Yeah.
Oh no.
My gut, like that's the reason why the actors will go, Peter Piper picks a peck of pepper,
Sure.
you're like warming up your diaphragm,
Yeah,
you're warming
yeah.
up your larynx, and you're like kind of warming up the whole system, right?
Oh my God.
And it was a complete knot of cold, icy fear. And
Oh
they
no.
asked me to repeat it, and I kind of got it out the second time, but then I turned off the mic, and I just remember thinking, like, "Oh my god, this is fucked
Oh
up."
no.
It was so yeah. So I was not confident, like,
Oh no.
that. Yeah. So how we get talking about technical theater? Oh, you were talking about. Oh, yeah. So I just so yeah, I went to CalArts to study uh, production design and technical theater and I dropped out after a year. And so yeah, I was officially theater is like the graduate slash god level of playing with electricity. So like as a kid, I'm like, and I get, but a theater has millions of volts of electricity
I
flowing
see.
through it,
I see.
hundreds of thousands. Like the largest theater I ever did lighting in was at CalArts. And we had this crazy teacher. I forget, you see his face, I forget his name. Everybody there would know his name. And like one of the first classes we took was he would take us upstairs to the substation and he would open the wall. And it was like where the mains, like the power from the city hit the building. And it was a piece of metal, like this giant piece of metal, and then and then another giant piece of metal. And these were the terminals that you could, and this is how much metal it took to pull that many, hundreds of thousands of volts through. And he was like, I want to show you a little trick. He took his hand and he put it behind him, and he took a wrench and he goes, this is 1,000,000 volts of electricity. And he hits one and everyone's like, ah, like, oh my God. And then he touches the other one and everyone's like, wait, what's going on? And he's like, if you touch one, if you only have one arm, you can't touch both at the same time. The only way to die here is to touch both at the same time.
Wow.
He's like, if you reached out and touched both of those, you'd be dead. Like in the second you touched them.
Dang.
And so it's like
Talk about hands-on.
hands on. Yeah. That's what's cool about technical theater is it's like there's the art and there's the vision of it, but then there's the physics and the technology of it, and there's the timing of the tech. This light at this time, this sound at this time, this effect at this time. And when you're in the theater, it's making a magic for other people, and it's like their imaginations take them, like fill in the rest of the gaps.
Nice.
So it's like theater kind of hints at it, and then you fill in the gaps. But when you ask them afterwards, did you like what would you think about the river? When you were standing next to the river or whatever, and they were like, oh yeah, they remember it as like a river, where it's really just a bunch of lights and paper
Wow.
and wind and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's seriously cool.
Yeah.
I'd
So
love to see you do that. I wonder if would you volunteer to do that for a production? I'd love to see
that was me,
you play.
dude. I met some guy. I forget where I met him, but he did technical theater here in Evergreen. And I was like listening really close. He was like, because he would just go do these shows. He would like do the lights for him. He would like kind of volunteer, do the
Yeah.
lights, do the sound, and it was really cool. I was like, damn, that's really neat that that'd be like available. Go hang out. But yeah, the I only got a chance. Aaron Stevenson, my best friend, he his parents were in the theater, and he was very familiar with a lot of the technical directors in Kansas City, and so getting to chill out with him and hang out with him and go do work with him, I got exposed to so many stages and so many theaters and so many departments, and that was one level of experience. Then I had my experience in high school with theater, and then in college with theater at Cal Arts, and I also went to UMKC for a while and did some theater there, and I got a chance to experience a lot of theaters and a lot of directors, and quite fucking frankly, I just hit the jackpot in high school with Phil Keenan.
Yeah.
He was a visionary and a monk and a mystic and was really into transforming rites of passage style young people through theater. And he was crazy enough to know that you had to go to the edge to do it and then go a little bit further off. And that my senior year, we did this show Alice in Cyberspace, which was 90 fucking 4. And we're talking about cyberspace as a metaphor with Alice in Wonderland and going into another world and being in this other world and what it would look like and everything. It was really on the cusp of the internet becoming a public thing. He's doing this avant-garde. I think they had 600 people in the show, 400. It was some insane number. And it was these mobs of people and lights and sound and it was just the coolest thing. That was like the peak of anything I was allowed to do. And the process leading up to that, and like I never even saw a fraction of it anywhere else in the world. It was very prosaic in a lot of other places. So yeah, I got initiated into like guerrilla crazy Peter Brooks, nutso, awesome theater, and quite frankly, everything after like life changing theater. And after that, everything else looks a little pale. I was like,
Sure.
it's like,
Makes
damn,
sense.
I thought that was a thing you'd see like everywhere.
Well, and how cool that you reached out to Phil and he helped our teens create rites of passage.
I remember that. Yeah,
That was
yeah.
really special.
He
Invited the
showed up.
community. They wrote it up in the Kansas City Star. It was a pretty big deal.
It was a big deal. Yeah, he directed that ceremony, and that was fun. That was the first time that when was that? Was that 2000? 2000. 2001, maybe.
Probably one or two.
There were these improvements in projector technology, and there were these improvements in search and image technology. And I remember I made a slideshow for that ceremony that was like 140 beautiful images from nature, and they were all just arranged kind of like a slideshow. And so I could, on the stage, I was doing the lights for that one.
Yeah.
I could bring up the images for the background, and then I could bring, we did this, it was a little bit we did with the lights and the sound, but it was mostly those images behind it. So we had a title card and we had some other stuff we could switch to, but I remember having like a really simple computer, and it was by today's standards, and having that slideshow, and then just those images, and to actually see like a rainforest projected in like that giant format. I remember it was like, it's like we're in this rainforest. It was such a cool, transportive, emotional feeling of being in that space. Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah.
I was honestly more aware of the interview I was going to have to do with a TV
Mm-hmm.
broadcaster and
Right.
interview I need to do for the
No, you
Kansas
had
Star.
lines in that show. You had the script you had to follow.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't remember that at all, but I'm sure it's true.
I got pictures of it.
Wow, neat.
I took some pictures of it from the booth.
Fun.
I actually ran across those the other day when I was working on that.
No way.
Wrangling that 28 gigabytes into one archive.
I
Yeah.
want to see. That'd be really fun.
Yeah. I've got pictures of you sitting on the stage, Phil sitting on the stage, some of the kids on the stage. I got pictures of the ceremony.
Fun.
Yeah. You were talking about dancing, all the dancing we've done, right? So we've done like live shows where I bring the PA system, done live shows where I bring the PA system and we have a fire pit and we do fire walking. Did that for a couple of years. Did a whole bunch of dances with the Earth School teens. That was fucking awesome. I did a bunch of dances where I traveled. I'd throw the whole thing in the back of my 91 Ford Ranger pickup. And
Didn't you both provide dancing but also healing?
Yeah,
Had some of those?
I was doing hands-on healing at that time, energetic healing, and, yeah, I remember no, that was one of the big crazy miracles that, there's this one event that was this crazy miracle that really, I don't know, cemented my path with all this stuff. I got inspired to do the dancing when I went to James Twyman, Doreen Virtue, and Greg Braden did a synchronized world prayer called the Great Experiment.
Mhm.
And they were using the technology of timing on the internet and the ability to say something like turn on the mic on the internet and then everybody could hear you. And it was one of the first times that it was the first time that there was a synchronized prayer that was of more than 1 million people. I think that was this threshold that was also backed by the technology. So they were going to broadcast the prayer, like a 30-minute prayer session, and everybody was going to tune in at the same time and be in the same place at the same time. And I had been following James Twyman for a bit before this with his Order of the Beloved Disciple, which was all about Mother Mary. And I had really strong experiences with Mother Mary. And I was looking for other people who were like Marian kind of people in the world. And I found him. And joined his little group and I was going to become a minister in the Order of Mariam. They were forming the Order of Mariam. It's crazy because my 501(c)(3 is now called the Order of Mary. And it was always been about Mary, which I talk about her so little for how much she inspires me and guides me and protects me and every other darn thing. But so I was, the whole thing was going to take place in Joshua Tree, California. And it was going to take place in this special building that a guy who'd seen a UFO had built. So this guy in like the 1920s had some kind of UFO experience, like physical. And then he started getting messages from the stars. And he translated this into a building that would collect static electricity. And so the entire building was built without any metal. It was all wood. And it was like yurt style, like 2 floors, but it had like this strip of metal around the outside and it had some kind of mesh over the thing. And it was some kind of, I don't remember the original theory. We just rented it, I think, for that day. Like it was just a rental kind of like we were just borrowing it for the Great Experiment. But that crazy building was ground zero for it. And I went there and I crowded into this space. I was one of the first people that was in there. I was in my 20s. And we were all just sitting in this, like everyone was in there. And then those three would get up and they would talk. And when they opened the prayer, it was like it was like a door opened and you walked into this golden space. There was 1 million people in this place at the same time. And something happened there, like to me, to everybody, that it was like, oh, we're way more. Like we're way more. Like what we are, we usually only experience as a little tiny dot, but we're this giant sphere of being. And when we were all aligned like that, and there were so many hopes and dreams and fears, because it was around I think it was right before the 2000, the New Year's, the changing it. Remember all that? There was a lot of
Y2K stuff?
yeah, it was Y2K stuff, but there was remember the end of the Mayan calendar in 2012?
Yes.
People thought everything was over. There was one of those in 2000 just for the millennial shift, and apparently it happens every millennium. But it was yeah, it was really strong, and so there was just a lot of hope riding in that moment, and it was really life changing to do that, to be with all those people and to feel those prayers. And I got back in my car and I was driving back, and this hundreds of people had driven their cars out to the desert to do all this stuff. I was driving back to the highway and I felt Archangel Michael be like super strong. It was overwhelming, and there was like the moon was setting, and it was like these beautiful mountains, and the moon was out, and it was full during the day. And I got into my car and I just like communed with Michael. That's what I felt like I was doing, and I had this vision of like dancing with people like at the same time, like all over the world. And it was so strong. It was like a little bit of a kind of a hangover experience, probably from the Great Experiment or whatever. That was so strong that it has stuck with me to this day as like a tone in my life that's just like been there the whole time. And after that, that's where I got the little track marks on my arms, was from donating plasma, because I was, as a wandering healer and artist, I had a place to live, but it was like 3 grand or something for a sound system. And I remember I donated plasma. You were the one who patronized the rest of the price of that. You saw me like working real hard and donating plasma, and you're like, "How much money do you need to buy this thing?" It wasn't that much. And that's when I got my first sound system and started doing dances. And I would do them anywhere I could do them. And that's what we did at our school. We did those dances. But then,
But the Women of Unity, they invited you to come do
yeah,
a bonfire, and I
that was
remember
about
that.
that was 450 ladies.
Earth Tribe, right?
Yeah, I called it Earth Tribe at the beginning. And
But then
later
even when we were in Durango, we did them at the yoga studio
we
once a
renamed
month.
it. We relaunched it. Earth Tribe went down when we became Christian ministers, and like all that tech went in the closet, and then
Mm,
it came out strong in 2012 when we got back together,
right.
and the
But
order
big
itself
time,
exploded.
2013.
Yeah,
Big Sky, Blue Sky, Big Sky. What was it called?
the band was called Big Sky,
Okay.
and the website is bigbigsky.com. And we launched it right in time for the end of the Mayan calendar at the winter solstice of 2012.
Nice. Yeah, we still have that poster in the second bedroom.
Dude, I've just been thinking about this a lot today because it has always been a challenge to do those it's always a challenge to do the dances. It's always a challenge to get all the tech going. But then since I started doing them online, since I started getting into making my own radio stations, and I did that in like 2008. And then we had a radio show in 2012.
At KSJD
Yeah. And that was like 60,000 people that could hear that one.
in Cortez.
So fucking fun. And, but anyway, broadcasting it online, there's all these crazy, crazy laws. I just went to our YouTube page this morning for Tecoreo, where we've got all these dances, and like 3/4 of all of my mixes were blocked.
Really?
And what happens is that at the time I broadcast them, I choose music that like YouTube is cool with.
Hmm.
Like it won't stop the live broadcast, so I can do a live dance together with other people. There's only 2 services in the world that I know of that can do a broadcast legally: YouTube and this other one called Mixcloud. And Mixcloud's far cooler, but they're probably a little looser with the laws. I think it's out of England. But YouTube is super serious with the laws. But like, yeah. So I would make a mix with like 13 songs in it, and I'd broadcast that. I'd show the mix to Google ahead of time, to YouTube ahead of time. And then if it didn't like a song, I'd take it out of the mix. So I like totally crafted it to like what I could broadcast live. It took me more than a year to get the first live online broadcast going from all this. Then, um, but what happened is somebody from the Smashing Pumpkins went back, and whoever owns the Smashing Pumpkins like music catalog, they changed their legal agreement, and they somebody clicked the box and said, "Don't let anybody use this music." And so my broadcasts from like 2020 that had their music in it now are blocked.
Shoot.
Yeah, and so I had to go through every one of them and tell YouTube to just mute the song out. Like it could trim it, but I was like, no, mute it. Show that there's a censorship at play
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
So it was crazy. Like for 2.5 years, you could dance to all our music on YouTube. And then overnight, like 3/4 of it disappears. And now it has to come back with like these little songs missing in it.
Wow.
It is such a, what's everybody so afraid of? Everyone listening to music together at the same time. What's the worst that can happen?
So talk about Jubilee. Talk about the next one coming up.
Yeah. So we got one this Wednesday. Wednesday at 7 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, we'll have a live Jubilee, and it'll be an hour of dance, and it'll go out to both of those systems. And we'll have a mix ready ahead of time. I just rediscovered high HD recordings of these old mixes. So I have like 20 more that I just discovered, which are all decent. And so we'll broadcast those. And yeah, when people are listening to it, they can be with us on YouTube, and it's great HD video. And then if it gets shut down, like I choose a song that YouTube between now and then decides is bad, there's that backup. The Mixcloud is the backup, and it always broadcasts on Mixcloud. They're more artist and art focused rather than commercial focused.
And families are very welcome. Our favorite dancers are your sister, brother-in-law, and their 2 kids. Rita is 5.
She's 5 here.
Duke is 3.
Yeah, he's a 3, an awesome 3.
She has more costumes that she wears, so be prepared to see
Or just do
rainbow unicorns and princess outfits. Anyway, it's great fun. They do art, they dance. It's really fun.
absolutely. No, that's the Jubilee is a globally synchronized art and dance party. So you can show up and just make art, or you can dance. And we try to go an hour after the Grays for Chapel of Sacred Mirrors and Cosm, Alex and Allison Gray. They do an hour broadcast on the full moon,
Hmm.
and many times they overlap. And so we try to go right after them. So if you watch the Cosm broadcast, and then, like if you want something to do live right after that, you can tune in. We try to come online pretty quick after.
Spend that energy somewhere.
And then we have a bunch of warm up music, and you can stretch out, and then you dance. You just it's ecstatic dance. So it's all about reaching a state of ecstasy. Sometimes I wonder if I've buried the lead in all this work, because the whole point of doing it, the reason I do it, is to get to that state of ecstasy, and then just stay there with other people for minutes or an
You
hour.
do that every time I watch you.
I know, and it is so very healing, and it feels amazing, and that's the intention. The intention is like get to that tone of ecstasy, and then it would be really cool in the future to put Jubilee as like an hour process in the middle of like a 4-hour process,
Right. I know.
and have more cool stuff happening before and after that would prime and prep people for the ecstatic state.
Don't yawn.
Okay,
Deadly.
so this is a podcast about Banksy, and we got a least review of Banksy.
Whoops.
This is all just intro. Just getting warmed up.
Literally, we're getting warmed up because the sun has shifted.
So we watched the Banksy documentary.
We did, which was interminable.
Then we went to the Banksy show.
We did, which was disappointing.
Today's July 10th, 2022. Today's the last day that show's open. But first impressions?
After watching the documentary, I was expecting real street art, like concrete walls having been removed from a British neighborhood. I thought that's what we were going to see.
Yeah.
Real live graffiti on real live walls. That is not what was there.
There was a couple of real ones. They had the two people kissing on the wood.
Oh yeah.
They had the original dollar. He printed like 1 million fake dollars or something in Banksy bucks or whatever it was.
Wasn't it Lady Di?
Yeah, Lady Diana.
Or Princess Di?
Princess Di instead, and they had the original money there, and they had that cop with the happy face on it, the riot cop with like the happy, and they had that extract.
The Grin Reaper.
The Grin Reaper.
Not Grim. Grin was heavily throughout. I was glad we went. I mean, we got Rockstar parking. We were the first ones in. It was fun. I thought it was interesting. They gave us a lame parting gift.
Which was their own marketing materials.
Right. I was
like
expecting something genuinely fun. But anyway, I mean, I'm glad we went, but I felt like the hype was bigger than the experience.
Yeah. Did you like any particular piece of art more than any of the others?
Well, I mean, the one that's been heavily saturated is a little girl with a heart balloon.
Yeah.
That's sweet. I'd be willing to wear that or have that in the house.
Sure.
Oh,
yeah.
Gosh, I'd have to look back and remember. It's been like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
There was something with the queen that I thought was interesting. Can you remember what that was?
They had a queen, but they had a queen that was more like an animal of some kind. It was like a badger or a rat or something.
I thought the Queen of England. I thought there was some.
It was like, in my memory, it was like, take the Queen of England in all of her garb, her scepter and her crown and her robe and all that jazz, and now put an animal in there.
Okay.
So you would think it was the Queen of England, but they're like, no, dude, it's an animal.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, like a rat, because it's Banksy and the rat.
Oh.
I don't remember, but I just kind of, yeah, there was a one there.
I could have done a better job taking notes, and it was just more experiential.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah, that was, I think, in the overall, watching the documentary, which was Banksy Most Wanted, which they tried to figure out who it was. That was the first time watching that, and then the other thing, the scale. This I always thought in my imagination, I didn't ever study or look at Banksy stuff very closely. I just saw little bits and pieces here and there and heard like read little stories about it once in a while. I thought he was like really huge, like really doing like lots of stuff, but it's actually was quite a smaller subset of work.
Right. But haven't they decided he's from Bristol, from the UK? I did ask you that on our last podcast. Where's he from?
Well,
What's
that's
his
it.
theme?
His
But
oldest art, the oldest Banksy art starts in Bristol,
Bristol, yeah.
where there's a
And I thought the use of
tradition of that.
stencils was smart because he said it would take 8 hours to do it, but then he had an epiphany,
Yeah.
um, that stencils would be a faster way of doing it. It was interesting on the documentary to meet somebody who actually was his manager for a significant period of time.
Yeah. 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 No, his agent. Yeah. Yeah. He's still his agent, or
Yeah.
was. I love where he came up with the stencil idea. That's a story that was new to me. Um, well, but just as positive for a second, like looking at the social good that he had done and like the money that he had generated for different places, it was just like this very small boys club in this one part of.
That's right, boxing or wrestling.
Yeah, they needed money, and he put a piece of art, the phone entwined lovers, where they're looking at each other.
Yes,
Cool image.
very cool.
Two people are supposed to be hugging and having the human
But
experience,
they're
but they're
actually
on their
looking at their
phones,
phone.
and
Yeah.
all the lights coming from the
No,
device.
that
There's
was
no light
cool.
from them. And then that guy wanted to sell it, and he sold it for a lot of money. And Banksy like blessed it, like called him or sent him a
Mm,
letter, said, "Hey man, I love what you do. I love what you do to the community.
yeah,
Totally sell it with my blessing." Because there's this thing in the Banksy art about selling it, right?
right.
And like that's why
Verboten.
there wasn't that much physical art at that exhibit, because most of it stays in place. Most of it stays where it was done. Did you see though that one prank he did where he took it looked like a fake piece of like bison hide that had like an image of little stick people on it with shopping carts, and he put it in the Natural History Museum?
Yes.
That physical art was there on the wall in the exhibit.
Okay, okay. And also, I thought it was interesting the girl with the balloon I'm talking about, that he actually found a way to shred it halfway during the Sotheby's auction. I thought that was clever.
Totally. That's the biggest prank that in art history, is like someone literally just bought it, and then it half shreds itself. It's like performance art. It's like fuck you to
No, it was
Sotheby's. It
great.
makes all of
No,
it.
it was great.
Yeah,
It was great. And clearly, it's the anonymity that gives him his, um,
power.
yeah,
He says that over and over. They had a
over and
bunch
over
of
again.
they had a bunch of this quote. I liked how someone curated his quotes and put them on the walls, and they sort of put the art into like little epics as you went through. I mean, that was good. There was like what, like
I thought
9
that was
rooms?
good. Did you watch the video that was in most of the rooms? I didn't really.
That looked really hard to watch.
It did look hard to watch.
But his primary artistic process is right now would be put a piece of art up somewhere. People don't even notice it for a couple days. But the moment he puts it up, he takes a picture of it. So there's a documentation of it. He then makes prints using the same stencils. So he puts the one out on the wall in the middle of wherever, for whatever reason he does it. And then he makes 100 or 50 to 100 prints, and he sells the prints. So there's this officialness to the prints he sells that are like validated by like his third party people. So he's anonymous, like no one knows his name officially, but that takes a lot of work for him to keep his anonymity.
Absolutely.
And but he does make money off of all of his art. He makes the prints and stuff. And so the art, most of what they were showing were just prints. Were just, if you had like gone to banksy.com, whatever it was, during whatever he put out, you would have had that. Maybe it was an auction, I don't know, that you would have a chance to buy it.
Mhm.
But they would have like the same print, and then they would have like stencil prints, or they would have like metallic prints, like this one's printed on gold, this one's printed on silver. And it was like, yeah, it just was kind of hipping me to the whole process there that artists use with like, you can have this art, but then you can also, it's the buying of prints that people want to, limited editions, 100, 150 of them or whatever.
I in particular love that day because we went to breakfast At Snooze. That was so much fun.
It was so much fun.
We both got scrambled whatever, but the pancake, oh my god, it was called a crème brûlée pancake, which was soaked in vanilla custard and fresh fruit and powdered sugar. Dang. We go out to eat, like, next to never. So that was pretty fun.
That
It
was
was
fun.
pretty fun.
Yeah. The, like, when Banksy first started to so he was out painting somewhere, like, doing his normal painting process, and somebody called the cops, or the cops found him or whatever, and he had to run, like, quick run, and the cops almost caught him, and he was laying underneath a lorry, which is the English word for a truck.
I know. I lived in Ireland for 3 years. I know.
I was laying under a lorry, and, underneath the lorry, he had to, like, hold still while the cops were running around, and there was some kinda crazy stencil on the bottom of the truck, and he was forced to the universe forced him to stare at it while he was not getting arrested for, like, a long time, and then it got through. It was like, "Oh, fuck, dude. You could use stencils and make this, like, a 4-second process of putting a piece of art up."
I missed that. Was that a part of the documentary
Yeah,
that I missed?
yeah,
Huh, that's genius. I love that.
yeah,
Sign from the universe.
sign from the universe. So, like, but yeah, so then he starts working with stencils, and a lot of his stencils, he'd have a stencil of like a person or a object or an animal or whatever, and he would find a place to put that in a natural feature. So he's looking at a side of a building, and oh, there's a weird crack there, and then he would just start the stencil and like integrate it into the crack, so it's like integrated into the physical world like that, which I think is one of the more powerful parts of the art, is like where it's placed and like how it kind of um like that one he did, the girl with the pearl earring, that famous image. I think is
Isn't
it
that Vermeer?
I think it's Vermeer. Yeah. He did that, but the earring, and he put for the earring, it was an alarm bell for the security system in the
Ah, clever.
so he painted everything but the earring. The earring was just like a flat white or something like that. And so it was like girl with the pearl earring, like art, but then it's like part of this building. It's like this alarm and this natural feature,
That's neat. No, that's very neat.
saying something about like the natural environment and how people just throw a freaking alarm bell on the side of the building, but it's not aesthetically thought through.
Didn't he do, Mona Lisa? I'm trying to remember. I'm wishing now I could have gone again more recently. Huh.
We got a ton of photos on your phone.
Yeah, you
We,
took all the photos.
yeah, yeah. I just wanted to have some a record of them.
Mhm.
That reminds me, like this whole thing, if you go to maps.tecoreo.com, you can get to a map of where all this Banksy information is. We'll have some version of it. Right now, it's going to be probably a Miro board, and you'll be able to like see all the photos and all this stuff in one place. You can like kind of pull it all together. But with some of the art that I loved was did you see the religious stuff? Where it was like, it would have looked right at home and like a Michelangelo, like The Last Supper. But it was all about consumerism. It was like, they had like, it was like religious Christian Jesus art, but it was all about like worshiping like the cash register or like the
Mhm.
shopping cart. It was like consumerism. I thought that was actually he's saying something really super powerful there, and he's also was saying something super powerful the whole time during the Iraq Afghanistan war, which started in 2003. He would have these, pictures of like Apache attack helicopters with like little pink bows on the top of it. Like, it's fine. And he's saying something like, the media is fucking whitewashing these death machines
Yeah.
and the death process that is war. You can't lighten up war, but the media lied us into that war, manufactured consent, as Noam Chomsky would say, and then they got the longest war in American history that had, aside from the individual bravery, and I'm sure they killed a couple bad guys, a bunch of bad guys here and there, and sure, less bad guys in the world, that's great. But like the collateral damage from that war, it's like you will never be able to measure how much more kickback there is from that. Like, than if the goal was to stop 9/11 building bombings, I don't think we got there.
No. But talking about the collateral of war, we stayed up till 3 o'clock during our staycation watching The Terminal List.
So good.
Wow.
That's such a Jack Carr novel, Chris Pratt, so good. We were cheering by the end of it, like, kill the fuckers.
Taylor Kitsch.
It's such a beautiful, like, to see justice enacted. And he had so many badass lines in there, but one of them was like, Like, I'm the consequence. Like, I'm the like I am like he's like, I am justice. Like this is what happens when you do bad things. Like, I know you did bad things. The courts aren't gonna do this. Your power and your money would get you out of it. That's why you're gonna die in your car. It's like it's like
Yeah, the first 2 episodes kind of slow and dark and gloomy, and I was like, "Oh
I want to
god,"
live in a world where people who are doing dirt, doing illegal shit are afraid of this fucking guy finding them.
of consequences.
They just like wake up some night and all of a sudden they're looking at their entrails being pulled out of their body in front of them. Like, I love that. Like,
That
don't
was that
don't
was
do
great.
that, Enron executive. Otherwise, you're gonna look at your children's entrails before you slowly die, or whatever. He wouldn't kill a kid in this, but he had all these principles. I love how they went out of their way, like third from the end, maybe, where he went out of his way to not hurt police,
Yes.
and he went out of his way to not hurt army people.
Even further than that, he went out of his way to save
Yeah,
the woman
yeah,
from suffocation
yeah. Thought that was such a cool
from the
message.
mudslide.
It's like every movie you see, it's like immediately everyone starts shooting the cops and the cops are shooting back. It's like, oh no, 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 no. In the real world, the moment you start shooting at a cop, this like changes the whole pattern of what's going to happen like following this.
But he was just deeply respectful of that profession, I
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah, totally. Their service.
Mhm.
And yeah. And it also was saying something about like, look how hard it is in this fictional world. Look how hard it is to do the right thing, like to get it done. And like, look at the sacrifice that's necessary. Like, that's actually right. Like, to really do the right thing. You wonder how many characters like that do you think it would take to turn our country around? Like with
Mhm.
the right lists. If you,
You mean for real,
yeah,
not a movie.
no. Like how many fat cats are there out there that just need to be shown, the correct side of a very strong weapon to change their minds about how they're doing things? And wouldn't you rather live in a world where that was happening? I mean, of course, this is all against due process, but aren't the courts a little corrupt? Don't they kind of fuck up more than they sometimes? In the Constitution of the United States of America, I don't know if you noticed this, but it says every single person has the right to a trial by jury. So these fucking courts, instead of using technology to speed up and be awesome and bring that truth, that if I am accused by my country of a crime, I can get a jury of my peers in a room and I can present my evidence and they can present whatever they got against me. And then my peers decide, not some fucking amorphous, faceless process. I think it's like 98 or 99% of people never see a jury.
Hmm.
When they're out there, like that movie we saw, We Own This City, that series, We Own This City.
Oh, we own the city, yeah.
Uh, that was about the cop corruption.
Right, same people who did The Wire.
You remember how there was this entire tension between the district attorney, meaning
Mhm.
the attorney for the government, the attorney for the local state. The DA was always getting people to cop pleas, and they were trying to turn people because gathering evidence is actually really hard. So if they can get someone to turn, then they can get a lower and reduced sentence for their cooperation with the state or whatever. All of this shit is they play dirty. They play dirty tricks to get people to plead out and not need, because if every single person who was accused of a crime demanded a jury trial, the whole thing would screech to a halt
Well,
and it would never work. So they're trying to like economize and like cut the corner. But it's like, dude, it says it right there. Trial by peer of jury. Trial by your peers. Hey, maybe this, maybe this. If it's so goddamn hard to hold someone to account in court, why have so many laws? And why have so many dumb laws that don't have any victims or anything like that? It's like your system's clogged up with these dumb laws that are more political. Drug laws are totally political. Nixon made all the current war on drugs because he was losing Vietnam because he was lying to the American people, and it's been completely confessed to that that's what they did. They made pot and acid and mushrooms and sweeping psychedelic act of what was it, 72, 71, 73, and yeah, they did it because they lost Vietnam. And they didn't, well, they were trying to get reelected. So they had a war on drugs, which turns out to be a job program for cops and courts. And yet that shit's that shit is standing in the way of people getting a trial by jury. So anyway, I can see where this is why a terminal list sounds so good to me. I'm like, oh, the power would be back to the individual and they would set it straight. This is when Super Trooper Navy SEAL would fucking do the work that needs to be done. God bless them. Go America. It's fucking awesome, dude. Okay, final thoughts. So one of the kind of themes that I took away from our Banksy deep dive here is just that art exists within limits. Like, so Banksy, it's got to be something on a wall, right? Which means you got to use stuff that's going to stay on a wall permanently, right? Not chalk, but paint, spray paint fast. Um, and, uh, and then he goes through the transformation where it's like, oh, but there's these cops who don't want me painting these buildings up. So he has to go to stencils, and it's like but like the commitment to do it using the stencil, like changes it and like focuses it and like makes it better, right? I don't know. Good art happens under a limitation.
Mhm.
Because I've had art processes sometimes that just open ended, like they just went through infinite scope creep and like no art got made. It's just like it's almost as if like the cell has to have a membrane so that it can concentrate the activity, inside a border, like defining this, not that, like as a part of the primary part of the creative process.
No, I like that. I mean, that's my creative process,
Mhm.
but I've never heard it expressed by somebody else before. I
Thanks.
need the container to be creative within.
And so like, I guess if you're making a piece of art, you like clearly define the container. I like it too when it's time bound. Like I'm
Mhm.
going to make a piece of art today. It's going to be done by the end of the day. So then it's like, you're not like, well, maybe I'll investigate this new paint process or this new brush or this new whatever.
I think that's smart. Cynthia used to invite me to come over and write, and she'd have, a
Type.
prompt that we would write, and we only had 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Really good stuff
Yeah.
ensued because
Totally.
there was a time limit,
100%.
the, implied pressure.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Well, life does that too, right? You got a time span. There's a length of time that the living organism is alive, and then it ends. The idea that like this, the infinite time, the infinite part, where there's just infinite time to make decisions, and it doesn't matter now. It can just matter anytime. That's the fantasy. The limitation is the reality. Everything's limited. That's the old Buddhist thing, right? Like everything will change and it'll change again.
Even just going through a staycation, that's an interesting one to navigate,
Yeah.
where there's this seeming limited time. You can get up when you want. You can go to bed when you want. Unstructured, unplanned. In a way, it's kinda nice to get back to work.
I
I like being productive.
I let go and forced the world out so intensely over our winter
Mhm.
2021 staycation
You did.
that it was kind of reflecting on it like 3 months after. I was like, that was kind of a mistake because I could look and see that I had let my engine go completely
Okay.
off. And it
Yeah.
wasn't like I drained the oil properly before winter or anything like that. It just like sputtered to a stop. And then it was like really hard to get it going again.
Jumpstart, yeah.
So this staycation, summer 2022, I kept part of the engine running the whole time, but it was the art part. It was like the making part so that I got a bunch of stuff done. And like this project was part of that.
That's right.
This was a project to think about what a structure around a deep dive would do and what would you leave behind to be like materials for someone else if they wanted to go down a path like
Mhm.
that. Like if they wanted to learn more about Banksy, this would be all of it. How would you arrange all the stuff so it made it easy? How do you make the perfect buffet for it? Like
Nice.
you could walk down the buffet and be, I'll take a little of this, a little of that, and oh my God, I can't believe they're putting this on the buffet. This is like my thing. I think one of my overall insights about education is like good education works like that, where you give the learner a lot of choice because, kind of buffet metaphor. You ever go to a buffet and your mom's like, you got to eat everything you put on your plate?
Yeah, I got that. I got that.
Yeah. I think I've read and I've seen demonstrated there's a very natural human experience when someone puts 3 options or 5 options before you and you as the student choose to one, you commit to you You chose it. There's something that can't be faked in the intrinsic nature of that choice, where you commit to it and it actually keeps the process of curiosity and seeking, like foraging for more knowledge and skill open. Whereas the moment someone shows you 5 of these and says, you're going to do this one, you're going to do this one, that doesn't work. It's like my most successful teaching, I think, happened in the space where I gave a set of options.
Hmm.
And then some students love this, some students love this, some didn't like any of it, but a lot of them, but the ones who could commit to or made the choice, there's something that happens inside the soul where when you're making the choice, it's like what you take back from that has so much more value.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It's almost like the way that nature taught humans to forage. Keeping the engine going on this vacation is like, that was so good. That was so great. Cause it was like, that's the part of my life that I want to just be on like a hum, like all the time. And then work is kind of like peaks and valleys. Relaxation is peaks.
I talk to people that I coach all the time about vacations,
Mhm.
and is it better to look at the emails and texts so you're prepared, or is it better to completely unplug? And there are a variety of different viewpoints. But this time, I actually checked email and text. I didn't respond, but come Sunday or Monday, 4th of July, I knew what to expect.
Yeah.
So it was fun to experiment. I didn't find it that disruptive to know what was in my inbox.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think that was a rule I made too when I was teaching. It was very important for a few years there to really unplug because the stress of teaching was just so much deeper.
You were not like a usual teacher. Good Lord. How many, um, what was it called? Curriculums did you have to create every month? Fresh?
For
It was ridiculous.
Yeah, they would have a book. They'd have to turn it into all this stuff that students would focus on for the whole course.
That's just, you were like a machine churning them out.
Yeah, I was. And also just the driving and the late nights and the early mornings and the stress, the political stress you had to also deal with.
All of it, but you love
Overhead.
teaching. So it was mostly worth it.
Yeah. But I think when I was in that model, it was more important for me to really, really, really deeply unplug.
Hmm.
But I really like getting away from work 100% because it's just and especially in IT, it's just a river of issues, and there's no end to the river of issues.
Right.
And there's always going to be, you always have to kind of stay nimble and quick and try to stay ahead of the next curve.
Well, your job's so different than mine. You're the person that everybody reaches out to
Yeah.
for IT
Support.
emergencies, and I mean,
Yeah.
it's in the moment, unexpected. My world is different. I have scheduled coaching calls, and there isn't that much surprising.
Yeah. Makes sense. Oh, this is some, I'm getting some awesome sound. These windscreens are not super wind resistant.
I think it's a sign.
It's a sign that we're going to get wet because this rain's going to hit us in a few minutes. Lover Duck, thanks for going on this deep dive of Banksy with me.
I enjoyed it.
Woohoo!